Thank you all so much. I have been in some really low places in my life, as have everybody here. But waking up for the second night in a row having shit yourself in your sleep is really low down there on the list. Little background. The summer of 2008, I was working like the devil. I had a couple of jobs, all of them outside in the sun for very little money. It was a long, hard summer, and the whole goal was get to Burning Man. Now, some of you are snickering, and for those of you that don't know, Burning Man is a festival held at the end of the summer on the Playa Desert in the Black Rock Mountains of Nevada, the third largest city for 1 week of the year in Nevada, 60,000 crazy people in the middle of the desert for art and fire and music and debauchery. And when I say desert, some of you think sand, but the playa is an alkalite mud flat, and when the wind whips up, the dust blows through the air until you can't see 10 feet in front of your face. And it was under these conditions we drove in a whiteout. The 21-hour drive from Boulder to Black Rock had been trying. Two of my friends weren't talking to me, and my girlfriend was only barely making eye contact. We set up our tent in the wind and the dust, an event that takes 15 minutes under blue skies, but took an hour and a half, and I realized part of the reason I was a complete asshole was because I was running a very high fever. I was sick. My girlfriend cracked ice packs, put them around my head and my neck, and I slept. And the next morning, I realized I would not be partying. I would not be letting it go. I wouldn't be letting this crazy, terrible summer pass me by. I would be dying of dysentery. And for the medical professionals in the audience, it probably wasn't dysentery. Dysentery does actually kill people. I just had the shits. And 2 days in, every 15 minutes I got up out of that chair, I clenched it tight, and I made that shuffle walk, the half block to the porta potties. And then I came back. Got to the point that Gatorade was moving through my system in 15 minutes, coming out the wrong hole, the same color it came in. I was miserable. The people around me, they are saintly. They endured my self-loathing, my hideous embarrassment at what was going on, and the complete raging asshole I was at the time. By Friday, things had begun to calm down a little bit. My saintly friends had canvassed the neighborhood for antidiuretics, and I could say to that very common Burning Man question, what's the best thing that's happened to you today? Well, I had a solid shit. Saturday came, the man burns on Saturday night, and I was a rave kid in high school, and raves are awesome and visceral, but there is nothing like dancing around a 60-foot flaming effigy for pure tribalism. But it was almost canceled that year. The dust storms had become so bad. 2008 was the worst year for dust. The burn was almost canceled for how bad the wind was. But it happened and it was subdued, and the next night was the temple burn. And for those of you that have not been to Burning Man, the temple is erected every year, and in it people place those things they wish to be rid of. I've seen wakes held there, I've seen the deeds of houses, I've seen eulogies to friends and pets, I've seen scrawled on the walls of the temple child abuse that people wish to be immolated in flames. And we sat as the structure began to burn, and then the dust and the wind began to roll in. It became so dusty that we could barely see the glow of the temple burning through the storm, and the temperature began to plummet. It was 40 degrees. We were shivering in the cold, and we weren't allowed to approach the flames because you were not allowed to approach until the structure has collapsed. And that year, they had made the support beams out of telephone poles, which are designed not to burn. For over an hour, we sat in the dust and the cold, and my friends wisely slipped off to warm sleeping bags and tents and cars, and I sat there. And when finally I was allowed to approach, I stood before the flames. I could barely see 10 feet in front of me before the dust. And I warned myself, and for a moment, for the first time that week, for the first time that month, first time all that summer long, things were just quiet. There was no hurry. There was no need to get somewhere. There was no terrible embarrassment. I was empty, both physically and emotionally. And there was a serenity in that moment. And an old woman put a jug of Damiana liqueur in my hands, and I drank. And some young hippie kid from California filled my water bottle with spring water, and it was cold, and it was clear, and it was sweet. And I stood there, and the little voice in the back of my head began to chirp, that little voice that all that summer long I had ignored, saying, dude, you need to calm the fuck down. And I heard it for the first time in a really long time. And what I say to you is, if you hear that voice, please try to listen, because sometimes it doesn't take no for an answer, and your vacation turns into a very interesting learning experience. Thank you.